All right. Some questions that we've been receiving in regards to iOS 7 has been around updating older iOS devices, and in particular the iPad 3. Some people have had issues surrounding performance and screens not being as responsive, the speed of the device, getting caught up and hung up on apps, and difficulty or the slow switching between apps. Here are some tips that might help out in trying to sort of help speed up your iPad, in particular the older iPads, once you have updated it to iOS 7. And most of those tips actually reside in the settings menu, which is down here. But again, depending on where you have your settings menu, it could be somewhere else on the screen, but I've got mine here on the dock. So click on that. And we're going to go down to General. And the first thing we're going to do in the General menu is, if we scroll down here along the right now, we're going to go to Accessibility. Now, we're going to look at two items on the accessibility list here: the increased contrast and the reduced motion. And what these two things are really about are settings that control the animations and the look of the iPad as you switch between apps and as you sort of access different tools and navigate the menus. And really, they are processor intensive because it's all based in the effects and the graphics. And so what we want to do is, in order to sort of help preserve whatever resource you have on the iPad, specifically processor power, you want to turn on these two options. So here you can see I've got the increased contrast turned off. I click on that and then turn this so that it is now on, and I can then go back to accessibility. By turning on the increased contrast, what we've now done is those menus that are sort of translucent, so you can actually kind of see stuff behind them, that is now turned off so that they will just appear as solid backgrounds. And again, this helps because in order to get that effect of that translucent effect, that uses up processor power, and so you want to sort of turn that on so that it reduces that and turns that effect off, essentially. Reducing motion, by turning this on, what we're doing is also reducing the amount of resources dedicated to the fancy new animations that you get when you start switching between applications. So turning these two things on should help improve performance. That's the first tip. The second tip, if we go back to General again, and now we scroll down to something called Background App Refresh. If we click on that, that's that item right there. Click on that. By turning this off, and right now it is turned off, but if I turn it on, what this means, if it is turned on, is that these apps here, and these are apps that I have specifically installed on my iPad, so your list might be a little bit different, but these apps here actually can start pulling data and refreshing themselves and updating themselves in terms of the content automatically and behind the scenes. And so if you have this turned on, if you're working on another app and these apps are running in the background, these can actually start to use up resources as well as they start to refresh themselves and update themselves. So by turning this off and then confirming that, we essentially make it so that they will no longer update themselves or get content from the internet unless we actually click on those apps and are in those apps. It is then that they will start to gather content from the internet and update themselves. So turning off background app refresh should help as well. Another tip, if we go back again to the general menu, if we scroll down to the iTunes and App Store and we click on that, you can see here that what we'll get is the ability to have automatic downloads. And the one that you want to definitely turn off is this last menu item down here, the one that's labeled as updates. I'm going to sort of flick the switch back and forth so you can see which one I'm talking about. Now, right now, I've got it turned off, and I would suggest that you would want to turn this off, because what this will do is that it will update apps in the background. If it is turned on, it will update apps in the background, and as a result, use up resources that you have in the on your iPad. And what I mean by updating is these are the updates that you have on your apps. Every once in a while, an app will need to have updates that are from the developer and for fixes or new features. And by having the updates turned on, they will just update themselves automatically in the background. By turning them off, they will update only when you tell them to update. So that's probably a good idea for you just to turn that off. Now, the fourth tip really is surrounding on the topic of updates, updating your apps and updating your iOS. Now, looking at the apps here, you can see the App Store. If I click on App Store, I've got a 6 there, which basically means that I have 6 updates. But you want to go in there and check, because it will be then that it will update, and you might find that there are more. By constantly updating your apps, you are now going to ensure that you get the latest updates and the latest fixes and tweaks, and that will help as well, because the developers are always going to want to try to improve performance of their apps. And so by always having the newest versions and getting all the updates, you're going to ensure that you have the best working app on, or versions of your apps working on your iPad. The other update that you want to definitely do is, again, in settings. And if we go back up to general, it's this item here called software update. Now you can see I clicked on it and it says that iOS 7 is up to date. And you can see there it's iOS 7.0.3. As this iOS begins to mature, the developers at Apple are going to continue to release newer and newer versions or updates to it, tweaks and fixes and stuff like that to help improve performance of your device. So you're always going to want to make sure you come back and check on this, so that you are getting the best working iOS on your iPad. And again, some of these issues that people are having early on with iOS 7, Apple is now working actively to try to fix those and make it so that it is not having a sort of this detrimental effect on the performance of your iPad. So check your updates, both in apps and your operating system in iOS 7. The final thing is, and it's going to be hard for me to demonstrate this because it's going to break the communication here between recording my screen of the iPad, is to do a hard reset. Every once in a while, if you're finding that things are getting hung up or you're caught in an app and it's refusing to shut down, you might want to do a hard reset. And what this involves is you holding down the home button and the power button, and you press them both at the same time, and you continue to hold those two buttons down. And you want to hold those through until the screen blacks out, and then you get that white or silver Apple logo. And once you get that logo, you can then release those buttons, and then the iPad will continue to reset itself. And basically, if there are any rogue apps running in the background that weren't supposed to be running, it will shut those down and basically give you sort of an iPad that has been, in a sense, refreshed and not having any of those apps running in the background. So that's a nice tip as well. It doesn't delete anything from your iPad. Obviously, if you're working on a document, you want to save anything that you're working on first. But if you've got apps installed and stuff like that, it's not going to delete those. It's basically going to do just a restart of your iPad. So those are the 5 tips to help you out with your iOS 7 device and to hopefully help the performance on your older iPads that have now been transferred over to iOS 7.